Welcome to AI Daily Deep Dive, where we bring you the most interesting AI news. The really interesting thing is this whole podcast, the research, the script, even our voices, are all generated by AI.
That's right. And today we've got a pretty wild mix of stories for you. It's everything from the future of work and education to AI changing the way we eat and even how we get scammed.
Sounds like quite a bit to cover.
It is.
So let's jump right in. There's this Newsweek article with a pretty attention-grabbing headline: "The robots are coming for your job sooner than you think." Kind of ominous, don't you think?
Yeah, it definitely grabs your attention. The article features Adam Dorr. He's the director of research at RethinkX, and he argues that AI is happening much faster than most people think. He says that big tech changes often happen within 15 to 20 years, not decades.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It seems like just yesterday we were all excited about the iPhone. Now we're talking about robots taking our jobs. What's the world going to look like in another 15 years?
Yeah. Dorr predicts self-driving cars will be everywhere in the next 2 years, followed by all kinds of humanoid robots. But it's not just about low-skill jobs disappearing. This article highlights how AI will affect everyone, even white-collar professionals.
We're talking lawyers and analysts, even writers like us. That's a little unsettling.
It is. The article mentions paralegals, financial analysts, and even journalists as jobs that could be significantly impacted by AI. AI can analyze contracts, trade stocks, write articles, and potentially do it all faster and more accurately than humans. And you know what? A resume builder survey says that 37% of companies are already using AI to replace workers.
That's a huge number. So what can people do to prepare for this? The article talks about some potential solutions, right?
Yeah. Dorr mentions things like universal basic income, education reform, and he even says we need to rethink work itself.
Those are some pretty big changes. It really makes you think about the future. Dorr also says that robot labor could soon cost almost nothing. How does that change our understanding of work and value? It's a lot to process.
He thinks that a $10,000 humanoid robot could operate for something like 25 cents an hour.
Wow.
That's a game changer.
Okay, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about education. There's this CalMatters article about using AI chatbots as counselors in California schools.
This is actually a solution to a big problem. California has a shortage of school counselors. A lot of states do. The ideal ratio is 250 students for every counselor, but in California right now, it's 464 to 1.
Wow, that's almost double.
It is.
So they're turning to AI to fill in those gaps. It's definitely an interesting solution, but I can see why some people might be hesitant.
I know what you mean. The article highlights Making Waves Academy. They're letting students text an AI co-pilot anytime for help with college and career questions. The idea is that the chatbot handles all the basic questions, freeing up counselors for more in-depth conversations.
That makes sense. And there are all kinds of AI counselors popping up: Ava, Kelly, Oli, Ethan, Coco. It's like a whole virtual guidance department.
Right, but the article also raises some concerns about this. Julia Freeland-Fisher, the education director at the Clayton Christensen Institute, worries that students might start forming relationships with the chatbots instead of with real humans.
I can see that. There's something really valuable about those personal connections, especially when you're young.
Absolutely. The article talks about weak ties, those acquaintances who can give you new perspectives and help you. Fisher says relying too much on chatbots could hurt those opportunities to build those connections.
On the other hand, that AI co-pilot at Making Waves Academy is really helpful for 9th and 10th graders who can't get to a counselor as easily. And careervillage.org, they've been using AI for career advice since 2011, and now they have an AI career coach.
Yeah, AI chatbots could be a helpful addition, especially in schools where there aren't enough resources. But AI can't replace human empathy and mentorship.
Definitely. AI might be able to help with things like college applications and careers, but it can't give you the same emotional support and guidance that a human counselor can.
That's right. And there are regulatory issues, too. Senator Steve Padilla is trying to get a law passed to protect kids from chatbot addiction.
Interesting. So there are both benefits and risks. The key is finding a balance between using AI to help people and making sure students still have those personal connections.
Exactly. And speaking of risks, our next story is a little darker. It's from Fox 23 Maine, and it's about AI-powered scams.
AI scams. That's really scary. What are we talking about?
The article quotes Assistant U.S. Attorney Andrew McCormack. He says AI is creating a new wave of potential threats, like think voice cloning and phone number spoofing, all kinds of tricks to steal your money.
So it's taking those old scams and making them more convincing and harder to spot.
Exactly. Imagine getting a call from someone who sounds just like your grandchild, saying they're in trouble and need money. That's what these scammers are doing with AI voice cloning.
That's terrifying. The article mentions that the grandparent scam has gotten even worse with this new technology.
Hmm.
Are there any numbers on how many of these scams are happening?
Yeah, the FTC says imposter scams were the most common type of fraud in Maine last year. Over 2,000 victims.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I imagine these scammers are pretty hard to catch.
They are. They often work from other countries and use fake names. It's hard for law enforcement to track them down.
So how do we protect ourselves from these AI-powered scams? There's some tips in the article, right?
Yeah, Jane Margison from AARP Maine has some good advice. First, never trust caller ID. Scammers can fake those numbers to make it look like they're calling from a real place.
That's a good point. I've gotten calls that look like they were from my bank, but they were scams.
Exactly. And another tip is to verify everything yourself. If someone says they're a family member and they need help, hang up and call them back at their real number to make sure it's really them.
That's smart. Always be cautious and double-check everything, especially when they're asking for money or personal information.
Yeah, and maybe the best thing to do is to make a family code word. If the person calling can't say the code word, you know it's a scam.
That's a really good idea.
Right. It's simple, but it works. And remember, scammers use urgency to make you act without thinking. So take your time, don't be afraid to ask questions, and hang up if something feels wrong.
That's great advice. Okay, let's move on to something a little more positive. This Forbes article is about how AI can be used to get honest feedback. It's harder than you think sometimes.
I know, right? Getting good feedback, especially on work or creative projects, can be tough. People are too polite or biased, or they're afraid of hurting your feelings.
It's true. I've gotten feedback that was way too nice or just mean, and neither one helped. So how can AI help with this?
The article talks to Dr. Lance B. Elliott. He's an AI scientist, and he says that generative AI and large language models, LLMs, can be really good for getting honest feedback.
So should I ask an AI to critique my writing instead of my friend?
Well, it's not about replacing human feedback completely. AI just gives you a different point of view, one that isn't influenced by emotions and social stuff.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful, but how does that work exactly?
Imagine giving an essay to ChatGPT and saying it should win a Pulitzer Prize. ChatGPT would look at it and tell you what's good and bad, no sugarcoating.
So it's like having a brutally honest editor available all the time.
Yeah, kind of. But the article says AI isn't perfect. The data it learns from and how it's designed can make it biased. Plus, sometimes AI makes things up.
So we should always double-check what the AI says and not take it as absolute truth.
Exactly. Elliot says the best way is to combine AI feedback with feedback from real people. Use AI to make your own judgment better, not to replace it.
That makes sense. Get a more balanced view. Okay, let's get back to big tech. TechCrunch says that Amazon is developing its own AI reasoning model.
That's a big deal in the AI world. Reasoning models are different because they solve problems step by step, like humans do. This is great for math, science, and logic-based stuff.
We've talked about how AI affects creative things and even counseling. This sounds like AI is going into even more complicated stuff.
It is. Reasoning models aren't just looking for patterns. They break problems down into smaller parts and use logic to solve them, just like us.
So AI is getting more analytical and strategic.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And Amazon wants to make their reasoning model cheaper and easier to use than the ones from OpenAI and DeepSeek.
Sounds like everyone wants to make AI available to more people and companies.
They do, and that could lead to some amazing new things in the future.
Okay, let's wrap things up with something that affects everyone. Food. This article from Northeastern University is about how AI and network science are changing how we understand nutrition.
This article is all about the work of Albert Laszlo Barabasi, the director of the Center for Complex Network Research at Northeastern University. He's a big name in network medicine, which maps the connections between proteins in our cells.
Network medicine. That sounds complicated.
It is. Basically, our bodies are like big networks, and if we understand how those networks work, we can make better treatments for diseases. Barabasi says food is a much bigger factor in our health than we think.
So it's not just about getting enough vitamins.
Right. He's talking about this dark matter of nutrition. There are tons of food molecules that we don't know much about yet, and they could be affecting our health in all kinds of ways.
Like there's a whole hidden universe inside our food that we're just starting to figure out.
Exactly. Barabasi thinks that if we understand these food molecules better, we can give people much better dietary advice.
That's incredible. What if you could get a diet plan based on your genes and your health?
Right. It could change everything about how we eat and stay healthy. Barabasi wants to do a huge project to map all the chemicals in all foods using AI, mass spectrometry, and network medicine.
Wow, that's ambitious.
It is, but he's found something really interesting already. Ultra-processed foods, like margarine, packaged bread, and sugary cereals. Well, their chemical makeup is different from natural foods.
So it's not just what you eat, but how those foods are made.
Exactly. And Barabasi believes that by understanding these molecules, we can create personalized diet plans based on what our bodies actually need.
It sounds like we're on the edge of a food revolution, all thanks to AI.
Yeah. And the coolest part is that Barabasi thinks we can uncover a lot of this dark matter in the next 5 years. And as we keep going with our AI news deep dive, let's talk about something that might hit a little close to home for some people, the job market. We talked about how AI could affect jobs, but this Newsweek article really digs into what could happen.
It is a little scary to think about robots taking our jobs. But I'm also kind of curious about the good stuff. What opportunities could AI create? Is there a silver lining to all this?
There might be. The article says that AI could get rid of some jobs, but it could also make completely new ones that don't even exist yet. Like, remember when the internet came along? It created tons of jobs nobody could have imagined before.
That's a really good point. We can't even picture what those future jobs would look like, but they could be pretty cool.
For sure. And the article also talks about ways to deal with people losing their jobs because of AI. Like universal basic income, what they call UBI.
UBI has been a hot topic lately. How does that work, and how could it help in an AI world?
Basically, with UBI, everyone gets a regular payment from the government, no matter how much money they make or if they even have a job. It's like a safety net for people who lose their jobs to automation so they can get education, training, maybe even start their own businesses.
It's an interesting idea, but it seems super complicated to actually do. I'm sure there'd be lots of challenges with something like that.
Totally. There are a lot of questions, like how would you pay for it? Would people still want to work? Is it even possible long term? It's complicated, and there aren't easy answers.
For sure. The article also talks about changing education. I guess that's about giving people the skills they need to succeed when AI is doing so much.
Yeah, exactly. Education needs to adapt. We need to prepare students for jobs that don't exist yet. That means teaching them how to think critically, solve problems, be creative, and be flexible. Those are going to be the skills you need when AI is constantly changing everything.
Makes you wonder if schools are really doing enough now to get kids ready for all this. Seems like we might need some pretty big changes to make sure everyone has a chance.
I agree. And the article also mentions that we need to rethink what work even means. If AI can do a lot of the stuff humans do now, what does that mean for our purpose, for how we see ourselves?
That's deep. What if work becomes less about making money and more about, following your passions and helping the world? It's kind of cool to think about, but also scary to think about how society and the economy might change because of it.
No doubt, AI is making us rethink our whole lives. It's uncertain, but there's also a lot of potential there.
Very well said. Okay, let's talk about another interesting topic, AI in healthcare. This Northeastern University article is about the amazing research of Albert Laszlo Barabasi. He's a real leader in network medicine.
Barabasi uses network science, which is basically the study of really complicated interconnected systems to see how proteins in our cells are all linked together. It's really cool, and it could change how we understand and treat diseases.
You said earlier that Barabasi thinks food is way more important to our health than we realize. What does he mean?
He says we don't really get nutrition yet. We focus on vitamins and minerals, but there are all these other food molecules we're just starting to learn about.
He calls it the dark matter of nutrition,
Sure.
right? It's like this secret world inside our food that might be affecting us in ways we don't even know yet.
Exactly. Barabasi thinks that if we can figure out these food molecules and how they work in our bodies, we can create personalized nutrition plans that are way better than anything we have now.
That's incredible. Imagine getting a diet plan made just for you, based on your genes and your health. It could revolutionize how we think about nutrition and staying healthy.
It really could. Barabasi wants to do this huge project to map every single chemical in all foods. He wants to use AI, mass spectrometry, and network medicine to do it.
Wow, that's a really big goal.
It is. But he's already found something really interesting. Ultra-processed foods, like the stuff you find in packages a lot, their chemical ratios are different from natural foods.
So it's not just what you eat, it's also how it's made.
Exactly. And Barabasi thinks if we can understand these molecules, we can make diets based on what each person's body needs.
It sounds like we're about to see some big changes in nutrition science, and it's all thanks to AI.
I know, it's pretty exciting. And the best part is, Barabasi thinks we can figure out a lot of this dark matter in just the next 5 years.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see what they discover. Okay, let's move on to a company that's really pushing the limits of AI.
This TechCrunch article is about Amazon. They're building their own AI reasoning model.
Okay, we've talked about how AI can analyze data, write stuff, even create art. But reasoning, that sounds like a whole other level of understanding.
It is. And this could be a really big deal for things like science, engineering, and even finance. Imagine AI that can not only work with numbers, but actually get the ideas behind them and make smart choices.
So AI is getting smarter and more strategic.
That's one way to put it. And Amazon wants to make their reasoning model cheaper and easier to use than the ones from OpenAI and DeepSeek.
It seems like everyone's trying to make AI something anyone can use.
They are, and that could lead to some really incredible new things being created in the future.
I'm really interested to see where all this goes. Okay, let's switch gears again and talk about something more personal.
Yeah.
How can AI help us get honest feedback?
Oh, I know, right? Getting good feedback, especially on a project or something you created, can be really tough. Sometimes people just want to be nice or they're afraid of hurting your feelings.
Yeah, I've been there. You get feedback that's either too vague or too harsh, and neither one really helps. So how can AI help?
Well, this Forbes article looks at how generative AI, especially large language models, LLMs, can be really good at giving you honest feedback without all the extra baggage.
So you're saying I should have AI critique my writing instead of asking a friend?
It's not really about replacing humans altogether. AI just offers a different perspective, one that isn't clouded by emotions and social dynamics.
I can see the value in that. How would that work in real life?
Imagine submitting an essay to ChatGPT and telling it you think it's Pulitzer Prize worthy. ChatGPT would analyze it and tell you what's good and what's not so good about it, completely honestly.
That could be pretty helpful, but also maybe a little hard to hear.
Definitely. The article points out that AI isn't perfect, though. The data it learns from and how it's made can make it biased, and sometimes it just makes stuff up.
Right, so it's still important to double-check anything AI tells you and not just blindly believe it.
Exactly. The best approach, according to the article, is to use AI feedback along with human feedback to get a more balanced view. Think of it as a tool to help you improve your own judgment, not to replace it entirely.
Makes sense. Okay, for our last story today, let's talk about safety in the digital world. This Fox 23 Main article is about AI-powered scams, and it's kind of disturbing.
Yeah, this is a big concern because these scams are getting more sophisticated and really difficult to spot. Basically, AI is giving scammers a new way to trick people and steal their money or personal info.
It's pretty scary to think about how technology can be used in such bad ways. What are some examples of how they're using AI in scams?
One that's becoming really common is voice cloning. Scammers use AI to make a fake voice that sounds exactly like someone you know, like a relative or a close friend.
The article talks about the grandparent scam. That's where someone calls an older person pretending to be their grandchild in trouble and needing money. I bet that's even more effective with AI voice cloning.
It's incredibly deceptive. The article quotes Assistant U.S. Attorney Andrew McCormack, who says AI is bringing about a new wave of potential threats. He's especially worried about these imposter scams because they're getting harder to stop, and it's difficult to catch the people doing it.
So how can people stay safe from these scams? What should they watch out for?
There are some really good tips in the article. Jane Margison from AARP Maine says the first thing is to never trust caller ID. Scammers can easily fake the number to make it look like they're calling from somewhere legitimate.
That's good advice. Yeah. I've gotten calls that looked like they were from my bank, but they turned out to be scams.
Exactly. And another thing she recommends is to always verify the information yourself. If someone calls saying they're a family member in need, hang up and call that person back at a number you know is theirs to make sure it's really them.
It's all about being careful and checking things out, especially when someone's asking for money or personal information.
For sure. And maybe the best tip is to come up with a family code word. That way, if someone calls and they can't say the code word, you know it's a scam.
That's brilliant. It's so simple, but it would be really effective.
It would. And another thing to remember is that scammers often try to create a sense of urgency to pressure you into making a quick decision. So take your time, don't be afraid to ask questions, and if something feels wrong, just hang up.
That's great advice. We've covered a lot of ground today. Everything from the future of jobs and education to the potential of AI in healthcare to the dangers of these AI scams. It's a lot to think about, but it's also amazing to see how much AI is changing our world.
Absolutely. It's a really exciting time, but also a little uncertain as we figure out how to deal with this rapidly changing technology.
And we're back for the final part of our AI Daily Deep Dive. We've talked about the future of work, personalized nutrition, and even the scary world of AI scams.
It's been quite the journey. Let's finish up by circling back to education. Remember, we talked about those AI chatbots as counselors?
Right.
Well, this Northeastern University article has a different take on AI in education. It's about how AI could change how we understand what we learn, not just how we learn it.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
It's all about this groundbreaking research from Albert Laszlo Barabasi, who, as you might remember, is a pioneer in network medicine. He wants to use AI to map out the chemical composition of all foods.
Wait, network medicine and food? How does that connect to education?
That's the brilliant part. Barabasi believes that by understanding how all those molecules in food interact and how they affect our bodies, we can personalize education in a way we never could before.
So it's not just about what we eat, but how what we eat affects how we learn.
Exactly. Think about it. What if your school curriculum wasn't just based on your A or grade, but was customized to your own biochemistry based on what you eat? AI could analyze your diet and create a personalized learning plan just for you.
That's kind of mind-blowing. We could spot learning problems related to nutrition way earlier.
Yeah.
Like if a kid is struggling to focus, maybe it's not just behavior, maybe there's a nutrient deficiency affecting their brain.
That's the idea. AI could help us find those links long before they become big problems. It could totally change special education, helping us create truly individualized plans for students with different needs.
That's amazing. But it also brings up some ethical questions, right? Having access to this kind of personalized nutrition and education could be a huge advantage, and it might create an even bigger gap between the haves and have-nots.
You're right, that's a valid concern. Like with any powerful technology, making sure everyone can access it and use it responsibly is super important. But we can't ignore the potential benefits. Imagine a world where education is really tailored to each person, where everyone has the best chance to learn and succeed.
That would be incredible. All right, let's wrap up with one last story from the world of big tech. TechCrunch has an article about Amazon and their push to develop AI reasoning models.
This is big news in the AI world. Reasoning models go beyond the usual AI. They can actually break down tough problems into steps and use logic to solve them, kind of like how humans think.
We've talked about AI analyzing data, writing text, even creating art.
Yeah.
But reasoning, that sounds like a much deeper level of understanding.
It is. This could be a game changer for fields like science, engineering, and even finance. Think about AI that can not only crunch numbers, but actually understand the concepts behind them and make strategic decisions.
So AI is getting smarter, more strategic.
Yeah, you could say that. And Amazon wants to make their reasoning model cheaper and more user-friendly than the ones from OpenAI and DeepSeek.
It seems like there's a real effort to make these advanced AI tools available to everyone.
There is, and that could lead to some really exciting innovations in the future.
Well, that brings us to the end of our AI News Deep Dive for today. We've covered so much, from the future of work and education to personalized nutrition to AI-powered scams and the ethical challenges of this powerful technology.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. AI is changing our world in incredible ways, and it's up to us to stay informed, think critically about what's happening, and be part of the conversation about how we want to shape the future of AI.
Absolutely. The future of AI is in our hands. Thanks for joining us today, and be sure to tune in tomorrow for another deep dive into the exciting world of artificial intelligence.